In 1960, the release of Psycho took postmodern horror to the next level by introducing a threat that didn't come from a haunted mansion, but instead came from an impersonal but socially acceptable form of lodging called the motel. By 1968, other directors were bringing horror to the postmodern world, but unlike Psycho, the villains were established motifs. In the 1970s, films like Bay of Blood, Texas Chain Saw Massacre, and Carrie took a cue from Psycho by making their villains the men and women next door. Upon the release of Halloween in 1978, distributors discovered that the villain from next door could be super profitable. This discovery led to the creation of a not necessarily new genre, but made the genre profitable. And anytime something can be marketed for profit, a genre title is born. And thus was born the slasher, like tonight's film, The Prowler. Released during the eye of the slasher storm, this is a textbook study in how to identify the classic slasher. Tonight on Klimczak's Killer Collection, we're going to take a look at the Blue Underground's DVD release of the 1981 slasher, The Prowler. The Prowler is directed by Joseph Zito, who would eventually be faced with the daunting task of killing horror icon Jason Voorhees when Paramount Pictures chose him to direct Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter in 1984. The special effects are the work of mastermind Tom Savini, who by this time had already had Dawn of the Dead, Friday the 13th, Maniac, and The Burning on his resume. While I've often cited Maniac as Savini's crowning achievement, Savini himself has often cited The Prowler and 1985's Day of the Dead as his favorite work. Let's head to the screening room and take a look at Joseph Zito's The Prowler. The Prowler really is textbook stuff. Using the classic formula, The Prowler begins with a crime that takes place many years before the present story. By this time, all of the good holidays had been taken, so our filmmakers settled for something a little more generic, a graduation dance.
One of your damn soldier guys showed his face. I wish I was back over.
A young couple is murdered on the night of said dance, and of course, the crime is never solved, setting up a motive for someone to go hacking teenagers to bits on the eve of their graduation dance. The first graduation dance to take place since the tragedy in 1945.
Well, it isn't Deputy London. Keeping an eye on things. Hi, guys.
The Prowler takes a cue from Friday the 13th Part 2, and drums up a confident blonde girl next door type in lead Joy Glaucom. The Prowler takes place in a sleepy Jersey seaside town, the type where red herrings are abundant and innocent young women are plenty as well.
Well, what the hell are you doing still out here?
In the tradition of academic-themed slashers like The House on Sorority Row, Graduation Day, Carrie, and Killer Party, The Prowler has a killer performance from a killer 80s band who sound like a poppier April Wine on 8-track.
Well, Mr. Turner, what do you think?
Oh, it's exciting. Just like the good old days.
These magic words are the incantation that summon the perpetrator of the original crime to return for a slashing spree. And he certainly does. The Prowler is like a desperate mix of Halloween and Friday the 13th. It uses all of the subgenre conventions, plays like a whodunit, which is also attributed to the Italian giallo subgenre, has a small town setting, uses the classic Cundy blues, and amps up the gore. Beyond Savini's top-notch makeup effects, there's really nothing much special about The Prowler. It's by the numbers. And because it's by the numbers, it takes itself way more seriously than it probably should have. making it a must-see for completists, a must-have for collectors, but awareness of existence is just fine for everyone else. In the midst of the indie distributor theater blitz, the Prowler didn't make much of a noise on the radar, but cable showings and video rentals kept the film from being forgotten. This, coupled with the film's credits carrying some horror heavyweight names, is worth at least half a slash on the slasher scale. As far as the film itself goes, this one never really gripped me, and I find myself losing interest by the time the action is about to begin. On my scale, and I'm sure to some controversy, the Prowler comes in at 2.5 slashes. While the directing, photography, acting, and effects are on par with some of the genre favorites, these properties never manage to quite get it right. They never really gel, and the film feels flat and plays like an imitator rather than an innovator. I'm Chaz Klimczak, and thank you for joining me for another edition of Klimczak's Killer Collection. I'll be seeing you again soon. Action. Tonight on Klimczak's Killer Collection, we're going to take a look at the blue... Oh, crap. What's bad about this?
Night, Mr. Waba.
Do-do-do.